to learn and to learn. Can someone tell me where we got to and what are some of the things we discussed last one or two? Just tell me so that we can move from there.
We discussed the foundation stones of Reformed theology.
Okay. So, okay, the foundation stones. And I said it has another name. What is the other name?
Reformed theology.
The tenets of Reformed theology.
The tenets of Reformed theology, right? Okay. So the reason why I always want to, because of the way other scholars want to put it. Some scholars will just write the foundation stone for Reformed theology. Others will say that the tenets of the Reformed theology or the Reformed tradition. So I said the other time, anytime you see people speaking about Reformed theology or they speak about Reformed tradition, they are talking about the same thing. So we should know. So that's why I always try to make this distinction, right? Good. So where exactly did we get to with the nose, the writing of the nose? Where did we get to? The last sentence.
That man's dignity is not inherent. It does not exist in and of itself.
Okay, good. So invariably, what I meant by that is that we don't have an absolute dignity. We don't have an absolute dignity in the that is the belief of the Reform, our doctrine. In the Presbyterians, we don't believe that we have absolute dignity. Our dignity is a driven one. It's a driven one. It's received from someone, and that person is God. So we don't have absolute. We don't exist by ourselves. Understand? The respect, the reputation that we have, it is what embedded in God. So last time I said that yenkra hai ni inkweje Yesu mu ena ededi. You understand? You remember that? And I said that one. So our salvation and everything and who we are is found in Jesus Christ. Now let me also quick to add that as Presbyterians, our hymns are sermons by themselves. So in case you don't have the Bible and you get to a place and you have the hymn book alone, you should be able to preach because it contains a lot. Because if you look at our hymns, it has been formulated around our doctrine and our belief, right? So whatever we are doing now concerning God, we can relate to most of the hymns, right? Can relate to most of the hymns. That's what I'm saying. So that is where we got to. So let's continue from this point. Let's continue with this paragraph. Ours is a driven. We are still talking about our dignity. So ours is a driven, dependent, and a received dignity. So ours is driven, dependent, and received one. You understand? So that's what I'm saying. Our dignity is found in God. We don't have our own dignity. That's why the Presbyterian will say, "Adibia meye no, asembia meka no, ese bibisa onyankopon say, so ebe nyame fa na." So everything is driven from God. It's God driven, and then it is God dependent. Our faith is God dependent, and then it is what? A received dignity. Let's continue. In and out of ourselves, we are dust. 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 But God has assigned a remarkable value. In and out of ourselves, we are dust. But God has assigned a remarkable value and worth to us. As his creatures made in his image, has his creatures made in his image. So, but God has assigned a remarkable value and worth to us as his creatures made in his image, right? So by ourselves, we have no value. Who could say, if you go out of God, you are a useless being? That is our belief as a reformed theologians, and that's our doctrine, that by ourselves, we cannot do anything, right? We are just dust. But even with that position, God still assigns what? A value, a remarkable value, an esteemed value as his what? His creatures, right? So he said that we're created in his own image. That thing is, he hold that one in a high esteem, right? It's very, very important. So let's continue. Full stop. Let's continue. He is the source of our life. He is the source of our life and our very being. He is the source of our life and our very being. He is the source of our life and our very being. He is the source of our life and our very being. He is the source of our lives and our very being. He has clothed us with a robe. He has clothed us with a robe, value, and worth. So you see, so this should take, let's look at something. In the Garden of Eden, Adam and Hawa fell, but then God covered their dignity. Or the tamebi then ekata wanadija. You understand? So even though we have a fallen nature, sin, as I said the other time, but God covers us. So, and here I'm talking about God has clothed us with what? A robe of value and what? Wealth. That's what it takes.
Papa,
Yes,
Papa,
boss.
Papa, what's the last word? What's the value and anything?
Wealth.
Okay. Value and wealth. Wealth.
Papa, I mean, me, word.
Wealth.
Mommy, last.
Wealth.
Oh,
WORTH.
Oh, okay.
Wealth.
Thank you.
Can we continue? I want to take another paragraph again. Can we continue?
Oh, yes,
Are you all there?
Yes, Papa.
Now, the most distinctive aspect of Reformed theology is its doctrine of God. The most distinctive aspect of Reformed theology is its doctrine of God. So, please, do you have it? The Reformed doctrine. Please, let's continue. The Reformed, I'll explain. The Reformed doctrine of God is not all that different from that of other confessional bodies. Other confessional bodies. Now, the word confessional bodies here, you can put either communion or denominations. What I want to say, other beliefs, other Christian organizations that believe in Jesus Christ. as we started in the beginning, I laid a foundation by telling you that, look, all the communions, meaning the churches, they have their theology, their doctrine, right? We have the Lutheran theology, the Baptist theology, the Anglican theology. Our theology, our theology, our theology, our theology is what we call the Reformed theology. Our theology is what we call the Reformed theology. Our theology is what we call the Reformed theology. So, in our Reformed theology, we are saying that our belief about God is not all that different from all other confession, all other. It's not different, and yes, that different, right? But then, so let's continue. Let's continue. The way this doctrine functions, that's the doctrine of God. The way this doctrine functions in Reformed theology is unique. You see, so our understanding of God is like of other denominations, but the way it functions is quite unique. Is what? Quite what? Unique. Quite unique. It's quite unique. Reformed theology applies the doctrine of God. Reformed theology apply the doctrine of God reluctantly to all other doctrines. Relentlessly to all other doctrines, making it the chief factor in all theology. Making it the chief factor in all theology.
Papa, can you repeat the sentence, please?
I'm taking it again. Reformed theology applies the doctrine of God relentlessly to all other doctrines, making it the chief control factor in all theology. So what I mean here is that the Reformed theology or Reformed theologians apply the doctrine of God to all the doctrines that they have, right? Now, doctrine, we have also come to understand doctrine means teachings, right? Apply this doctrine of God in all their teachings. So in all their teachings, you'll find the understanding of God. Do you understand? So it means that God, the teaching on God has become what? The controlling factor of all what? All other theology. In other words, we want to say that the doctrine of God is the basis of all other theology. All other theology. Let's continue. Reformed theology insists that the real measure, please write. Reformed theology insists that a real measure of freedom, has been assigned to man by the Creator. Has been assigned to man by the Creator. But that freedom is not absolute. And man is not autonomous. Man is not autonomous. So here in this paragraph, we are in the Reformed theologians want to say that God has given us freedom. But then the freedom is a measured one. Tape down, right? So then we go back to Paul, where he said that I have the right to do everything, but not everything is permissible to me. So that is freedom, right? But a measured one. Do you understand? And that the freedom that you have does not exist by its own. It depends on what? God. So you let me now finish this sentence and I'll then explain everything. So let's go. Our freedom is always and everywhere limited by God's sovereignty. Our freedom is always and everywhere limited by God's sovereignty. Excuse me, I'm coming out. Our freedom is always and everywhere limited by God's sovereignty. God's sovereignty. So let's full stop. God is free, right? God is free, and we are free. But God is more free than we are. Now, the last sentence. God does not violate human freedom. God does not violate human freedom. What it means that, okay, so God does not violate human freedom. So let's take 5 minutes to explain this paragraph. Now, what it means here is that man has been given a measured freedom. God gave us freedom, but that freedom is what? Measured. That freedom is measured. It is not an absolute freedom. Say, I have to go out, do everything. Do you understand? It is measured. It is not an absolute freedom. The freedom is limited by God's sovereignty. The power of God overrules our freedom. Do you understand? And he continued that God is free and we are free because we are all humans, right? We are free, but God is more free than us. So in this morning, I tried to talk about something. There is this man, he's a Canadian, Indian Canadian. He passed last year. He made an analogy, and I think it is good for this class. It's called Ravi Zachariah or Zachariah. I don't know whether you've heard his name. Ravi said that God has given us a free will to do everything. But then, in order for God to control that free will, God gave us an ethic of love. That is why I have the right to pull gun, to shoot Jonathan, shoot you because I hate you, I want to shoot you, right? But then the ethic of love will tell me that no, shooting him is bad, right? So I will not do it, right? So you have the right to do everything, but the ethic of love controls you, right? And you said that, and someone, if you ask that, why did just look at it. If you say that, why did God knows that when I pull the trigger, it will kill Jonathan, and God did not stop me from what? Pulling the trigger. Zachariah said that if you ask that question, then you are telling God to what? Control your freedom, right? Example is, you want to cross the road, and God knows that when you cross the road, car will knock you. So God should have hold your hand. The freedom to cross the road, God will hold your hand, not to cross. In that day, your ability to cross the road has been taken away from God. But God allows that. Even though you have the right to cross the road, you also have that ethic in your mind that you should be what? So that you will not be hit by what? A car. Now, if you are telling God to control the freedom, example is you have water and you want to drink the water, then God will cause it to freeze. When the water become ice, he has controlled that freedom. So if you do that, we are asking God to control. At that time, you don't need ice. You only needed what? Water. But God felt that, no, I want to make it block for you. That is that. So he gives us the right to do everything, but he also gives us ethic to control whatever we do. If you ask God to control our freedom, then it means that there are a lot of things we will not be able to do. That is the explanation of this free will thing by Rabbi Zachariah, and I think that it falls into what we do as what Reform theologians. Good. Let's continue another paragraph. Let's continue. In Reformed theology, if God is not sovereign over the entire created order, then he is not sovereign at all. Then he is not sovereign at all. In Reformed theology, if God is not sovereign over the created order, then he is not sovereign at all. If God is not sovereign, then he is not God. If God is not sovereign, then he is not God. If God is not sovereign, then he is not God. If God is not sovereign, then he is not God. If God is not sovereign, then he is not God. It belongs to God as God to be sovereign. It belongs to God as God to be sovereign. Full stop. How we understand his sovereignty has a radical implication for our understanding. Please, let's write. It's a long sentence. How we understand his sovereignty has radical implication for our understanding. For our understanding. How we understand God, how we understand his sovereignty has a radical implication for our understanding of the doctrine of providence. Please, the doctrine of providence, that's a teaching on providence. Doctrine of election and justification. So the way we understand the sovereignty of God will help us to understand this doctrine, these teachings, when it comes to providence, when it comes to election, and when it comes to justification. When it comes to justification. Let's continue this sentence too. The same could be said regarding other attributes of God. Same could be said regarding other attributes of God, such as his holiness, omniscience, and immutability. Such as his holiness, omniscience, and mutability. Such as, same could be said regarding other attributes of God, such as his holiness, omniscience, and immutability. Now let's go to the next point. So you remember we started by saying that Reformed theology is what? Systematic theology, or the Reformed faith is systematic theology. I pointed out that it is systematic theology because Systematic theology is a science that employs accuracy and consistency in what? Interpreting the interrelatedness of the scriptures, right? So Reformed theology uses the systems or the tools that the Reformed theologians use in analyzing issues, right? Now, the next thing we are coming to do, which I want you to write, is that Reformed theology is Catholic. Reformed theology is Catholic. Reformed theology is Catholic. The reason why I'm trying to let you understand is that, you see, the Reformed theology is not, as I said from the beginning, it's not just an entity or no bia any there be maybe more he shares with other faiths, right? So it is Catholic. Now the word Catholic here means universal. We are not talking about Roman Catholic Church, the universal church. So the word Catholic here means universal. 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 The word Catholic is universal. The
Why
word
is it a subtopic?
No. It's okay. It's a subtopic, right? As I said, the first thing we did was that the main topic we are doing is reform. We are trying to find the meaning of reform. What we are doing just to answer the question, what is reform theology? What we are trying to answer a question, what is reform theology? So I started by telling you that reform theology is systematic in nature, and I explained, and I've been doing that till now. This time around, I want you to understand that it is what? Catholic. Reformed theology is Catholic, meaning that Reformed theology is what? Universal. You understand?
Yes.
Good. Now, the word, as I said, it is universal. Before we continue, like we did first, I want us to do something again. I want you to write something, but I want you to write this word for me. Tulip. You know tulip? TULIP. Just write it in capital. Just write it in capital letters. I want to do something. Okay. So we are going to take the words one by one, the letters one by one. The first letter is T. Total, so the T, just write hyphen and write total depravity. Depravity. Total depravity. DERIVITY. Depravity. You see, we said in the last class that God takes human beings serious, and Reformed theology takes sin serious, and that because they take man to be what? Serious, and sin offends God. We also said that the fall, we speak about the fall of man. I mentioned the Imago Dei last time. Now, what I mean by total depravity here means, how do you call it? We have been deprived by sin, and then we ourselves cannot save ourselves. We cannot save ourselves. That's what it means, total depravity. We are deprived, we are down, we cannot save ourselves, and we needed someone to save us. The next one is you. The next one is you. And then you write unconditional election. Unconditional election. Unconditional election. Then we have limited Then the next one is L. It is limited atonement. Limited atonement. Atonement.
Can you repeat that, please?
Limited atonement. Then we have irresistible grace. Irresistible grace. And then the last, that is the other, after the atonement, we have, that's the L. So the next letter is I, which is irresistible grace. And then the next one is P, the perseverance of the saints. The perseverance of the saints. I want us to write this. I want you to write this down before we continue. These are the 5 articles. These are the 5 articles of Reformed theology. The 5 articles of Reformed theology. Also known as the 5 points of Calvinism. Also known as the 5 points of Calvinism. Also known as the 5 points of Calvinism. Please, do you have that?
Yes, Papa.
Okay. So we will come back to these articles, right? We'll come back to these articles, right? We'll come back to it when we are taking the pillars, the foundation stones one after that. We'll come back to it again. Now let's continue. Now we are now coming to do the definition, the definition of a Reformed theology as Catholic. Now, Reformed theology is Catholic because it shares much in common. Reformed theology is Catholic because it shares much in common with other communions, that is, other denominations. It is common because it shares, it's Catholic because it shares much in common with other communion. So you remember in the Apostles' Creed, we will say that I believe in the communion of what? The saints. Now, that communion of the saints, we don't mean the Lord's Supper that we take, no. We are meaning about the gathering of what? God's people, right? And then when we say that in the Apostle, we also said the Catholic Church, the Catholic. What we mean is that we are talking about what? The Reformed, the Universal Church. What I say. So that's what it means. So normally so that's why I've been using these words interchangeably. Confession, confessional bodies, denomination, and communion. It's all meant the body of Christ, right? So I'm taking it again. Reformed theology is Catholic because it shares much in common with other communions that are part of historic Christianity, that are part of the historic Christianity, that are part of the historic Christianity, that are part of the historic Christianity. So now the Reformed theology shares much. It's Catholic because there's some of the 8 beliefs. If you go to Methodist, some of the things that the Methodists do, we do some of them. If you go to Anglican, we also do some of them. You go to maybe the Roman Catholic, there are certain things, even though Roman Catholic they are so different from a lot of things, but there are certain practice you'll find us doing the same thing. So we share certain things in common with the historic Christianity. I say historic Christianity, that this tradition of churches, right? We share much with them. We share very, very a lot with them. Good. Please, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, Papa.
Now, I want you to write this sentence, this long sentence for me. Then we'll continue to explain. The 16th century reformers, very, very interesting. The 16th century reformers were not interested in creating a new religion. They were interested in renovation, not innovation. Please, those two words, you can underline them. The 16th century reformers were not interested in creating new religion. They were interested in renovation and not innovation. So, you finish and I'll explain. So you see, as I said, Reformed theology shares much with what? The other communions, other confessional bodies, other distinct churches. I don't want to use the word church, but denominations, and because we are all, I'm using it adversely, but I want to use the word communion, and so that we understand the groupings. Now, that's Christian gathering that have been part of the Christian church history. We share a lot with them. You also know that, I don't know whether, please, did you study church history?
Yes.
Yes.
You did church history.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So maybe you will understand where I'm coming from now. Now, maybe I said, in the 16th century, we had the Reformation. The Reformation, people attribute the Reformation to Luther, but Luther is not the leader of the Reformation. Do you understand? Because there were different agitations. If you go to Switzerland, Zwingli was there, right? When you go to Germany, Calvin was also there. Knox and John Calvin were also doing their own things. You go to Germany, Luther is also doing his own. Then we have Erasmus and co doing. So it's like it was a worldwide agitation. People were agitating for the rot, agitating against the rot in the church, right? So those people were agitating for the rot in the church. They are called the reformers. And the reformers were the people who led the Reformation. But the reason why Luther's case is so popular in all this is that, you know, the 99 theses he published, and then I pasted it on the entrance of the Wittenberg Chapel. That was the final straw that broke the camel's back. Do you understand? Good. So now, when the reformers came, they were not thinking about creating a new religion. No, they were not thinking of creating a new religion. They were only trying to correct the errors of the time, the apostolic errors that were being championed by the Roman Catholic Church. Let me give you an example. That is a common example that you should know. We have something we call the sale of indulgence. The sale of indulgence was that it is just a paper. If you buy the sale of indulgence, that paper whilst you are alive, it is believed that when you die, you not go to hell. You just go to heaven. So Erasmus wrote that when a coin sound in the coffin, a soul rises out from what? Purgatory. That is, so you see that thing. So that was one of the rods. So people were not living moral lives because they have bought this. So they were just living anyhow they wanted, right? So the reformers tried to correct these errors. This can be traced to John chapter 3. When John told the people, Matthew chapter 3, when John told the people, look, repent and seek salvation and stop telling yourself that you have Abraham as your father and that the axe is ready by the what? The tree, and it's ready to what? Pull it down. Do you understand? When he referred to the Pharisees as what? The group of vipers. That thing has something to do with this. When people buy the sale of indulgence, they don't live good moral lives again. They go out and they live anyhow because they know when I die, I'll go. So these were some of the rots the reformers start to what? Correct. So they were not trying to create a new religion. They were to correct the wrongs in the church then. So that brought the what? The Reformation. Now, so that's why I've written here that they were interested not in what? Renovation. They were interested in what? Renovation and not novation. Novation means they are bringing a new ideas, new religion. No, they just want to renovate what has been what? Battered, destroyed over the centuries. So that's what they did. Do you understand? Good. Please, do you understand?
Yes.
Let me give you an example. Let's write this. I want you to write this example again. Just like the Old Testament prophets did not change the original covenant God made with the Israel. Just like the Old Testament prophets did not change the original covenant God made with Israel. The reformers did not depart from the revealed faith, but seek to call the church back to its apostolic and biblical roots. So that's the example.
Can you repeat?
I'm repeating everything again, sir. Just like the Old Testament prophet did not change the original covenant God made with Israel, the reformers did not depart from the revealed faith, but they seek to call the church back to its apostolic roots. To its apostolic roots.
Please, the last sentence again.
I'm taking all again. This example is very, very important because it gives credence to what I said. It said, just like the Old Testament prophet did not change the original covenant God made with Israel, the reformers did not depart from the revealed faith, but seek to call the church back to its apostolic and biblical roots. So, hello, are you there with me?
Yes, Papa.
So that is the point we are making here now. You see, so the reformers, for now, you and I can limit ourselves to John Knox and what? Calvin, right? Especially Calvin. So what Calvin seek to do, which you and I are now believing in his work, is that he did not seek to change what has been done by the apostolic, how do you call it? The apostles, or what was being doing historically, what the liturgy of the church. No, they didn't try to change the faith or create a new religion. But the rot that was going through, the rot that the church was going through, that was what they tried to change it. So an example is what I said in Matthew 3, when or Luke chapter 3, it's there, when John the Baptist has to warn the people. It's the same thing. The people were buying sale of indulgence, and they think that if you have the sale of indulgence, you can go to heaven. You don't need to live a moral life again. So they have to speak against it. So they came, and by all what they do, the main purpose of doing this is to ensure that the church is brought back to its apostolic roots and its biblical roots. Because it is not biblical. Buy a paper. You buy this paper and say that you don't live a moral life again. It is not something good, right? It is not biblical. So they spoke against it. And that thing was, this thing, it is not only Luther that spoke against it. All the reformers spoke against it. And that's why I quoted the Erasmus popular saying that when a quern sound in a coffin, a soul will what? Resurrect and go to heaven, which is not correct. You understand? It is not biblical. It is not founded on any sound biblical principle. Now, please, did you get? Are you getting the point I'm making here? Patrick, what I say?
Yes, Papa.
Yes, Papa.
Okay. So can we continue another paragraph again?
Yes.
The reformers insisted that their work of reformation is not complete. So the reformers' work was not complete. I'll tell you why. We'll come to understand why the reformers' work is still not complete. And you come and understand why the Presbyterian Church is behaving how it is behaving today. The apostolic, please, do you have the reformers insisted that their work of reformation is not complete. Right. The apostolic tradition must be passed on to each successive generation. They said that their work, the reformers insisted that their work is not complete. So the apostolic tradition must be what? Passed on to a successive generation. Successive generation. Please write this. I want you to have this thing correct. The church is called to be. The church is called to be. I am spelling something for you. The church is called to be. As the church is called to be super. So the church is called to be super. SEMPER. SEMPER. Reformada. The church is called to be super reformada. It's a Latin word, and I'll explain. The church is called to be super reformada. Now, put this one in inverted commas. Put what I'm going to say in inverted commas. Now, listen. Once reform, always reforming. Once reform, always reforming. Once reform, always reforming. Once reform, always reforming. Let's put our pens down now. Let me explain. So, please, whatever I'm saying, just place your mind on Calvin. don't look at all the reformers, but our mind is on Calvin, right? So what Calvin or Knox, which our reformers are trying to say that the work of the reformers is not what complete. Their work, the new things, the change that they brought, the correction they were trying to correct the bad order has not complete. Because they believe that every, how do you call it, the apostolic tradition, the tradition that was led by Peter and co, must be what? Passed on to the next generation. Do you understand? So when they said that, and every generation passes on, so that is why they call us Reformed tradition. What is what is tradition? Tradition is like something that changes over and over time. It keeps changing, right? Like there was an advert in Ghana on King soap. I say my grandmother used King soap, and then myself I used it. My children will use it, and they said King soap. The tradition what goes on. So it's something that has been passed over and over and over. That is what tradition means. So when they say Reformed tradition, let's just continue to have this thing in mind, that it has been passed over and over and over to us. You understand? Which is very, very important. Now, let me get back to, so they are saying that the apostolic tradition must always be passed on to the next generation, right? So that's what they said. And they said that the church must be super reformada. What they are saying is that once the church has been reformed, the church is always what? Reforming. Once a reformed church, the church is always reforming. Now, when I give this example, you understand it very well. Let's look at the Presbyterian church. About 40 years ago or 45 years ago, we dare not ordain a woman. We were not ordaining women. We were not ordaining women. Fast forward, today we are ordaining women. That is the reform, the tradition. That tradition has changed. Some years back, we were not doing, we sit down to pray, and then we stand up to sing our hymns. Drumming was not part of the church. Today, drumming is part of the church. We sing praises, it's part of the church. It's the reforming nature of the church. Now, you see what is happening in US. The church have decided, when we were not ordaining women, they insisted that women should be what? Ordained. Today, they said, okay, let's allow a man and a man to marry. The Presbyterian church is accepting it too. So let's do that. Let women marry. Let's elect gay elders and gay presbyters. Let's train ministers to be ministers who are gay and lesbians. Let's ordain them as what? Ministers and elders. Was it so 20 years ago? Was it so? It was not so. Why is it so? Because of this doctrine of what? Once a reformed tradition, you are always reforming. So the church, look, what we are seeing today, more things will come into the church because of this doctrine that we continue, things are continually changing. So once a reformed church is what the church will continue to reform. Today, in Canada here, if we had gone to General Assembly last year, we would have passed the LGBTQ bill. We would have passed it, and now we can do same marriage, we can do ordination. But this year in June, we will definitely pass it. These are some of the things this is happening. But if you are a lay person, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know. Why? Because you don't know the doctrine of the church. The doctrine of the church says that once a reformed church, once a reformed, you are always what? Reforming. But as for this example of reforming, Luther or Calvin will really cry in their graves. Seriously.
Yeah.
Because there are certain things. Some theologians always ask that, look, if what was done in the 1500s, which is the 16th century, no, and that led a breakaway. We have the Protestant church, and we now call ourselves Reformed tradition, and we have the evangelicals, and we have the Wesleyan. What we are doing, they would have caused for another reformation again. And in fact, someone said Luther would have apologized to the then church if they see what we are doing today. Today, even this is even better than what we are doing today. It's better than what we are doing today. Just look at what the Anglican church is doing. Just look at what the Presbyterian church we are doing. Because of this kind of thing. Once a reformed church, we are always what? Reforming. So today, let's bring this thing in, let's bring that in, and it's killing the church. But when it's happening this way, if you are not taught, you don't know the doctrine of the church, I said, then and yes, then I say super reformer. Once a reform, you are always reforming. So that's it. Maybe now we are a lizard. Next time we'll grow, reform to become an alligator. Then we are going.
Papa, question.
Yeah.
Papa, my question is, the whole point of Reformation was to bring the church back to apostolic and biblical roots.
Yeah.
So why are we? I understand that we should be reforming, but if we are bringing everything in, then it seems we are moving away from the apostolic and biblical roots.
But you heard what I'm saying. I explained a bit, and I told you that if those who led the Reformation then know that, oh, is that how the people are going to behave? They would have. Someone say, "Uncle Luther Crano," or ever be apologizing, because now we are doing worse than what was being done. Like example, some of the things they spoke against was right. Like they spoke against the Vulgate. The Vulgate is the Latin translation of the Bible. And those days, it is only the priest that has access to the Bible. Nobody can read the Bible. So they spoke against that one. That is where the idea of the priest, it is Luther that promulgated the law or the idea of the priesthood of all believers. But the priesthood of all believers. So we all have access to grace. We all have access to grace. And because those days, it is only the priest that read the Bible. You understand? So what I want to say is that, yes, the Reformation was good, but today we are making things worse. They were not, that's what I said, they were not interested, they were there to correct the wrongs. But one thing we should also understand, it is human nature. In the world, anytime we try to solve a problem, we will solve the problem, but the solution of that problem will lead to another what? Creating of other more serious what? Problems. Good here. We are now looking for a vaccine for COVID. After getting the vaccine, you just see, we are going to create, going to give us another problem again. Dr. Mbeboa.
No, it's a never ending game.
It's a never ending game. Like the UN and other people, they have always tried to find world peace. But anytime they try it leads to another thing again. It is a human. So when the church tried to reform, see where we found ourselves. Okay, I think our time is up. But can you allow me to conclude this paragraph, then we can move to the next one. Let me conclude this paragraph.
Yes, Papa.
This is very, very important. Every Christian community creates its own subculture of customs and tradition. Every Christian community creates its own culture and subculture. Create its own subculture of customs and tradition. Every Christian must examine their own tradition to ensure they are consistent with the apostolic tradition. I'm taking the whole thing again, the whole long sentence again. Every Christian community creates its own subculture of customs and tradition. Every generation must examine their own tradition to ensure they are consistent with the apostolic tradition. Please, do you all have it? I'm taking it for the last time. Every Christian community creates its own subculture of customs and tradition. And every generation must examine their own tradition to ensure they are consistent with the apostolic tradition. So, in short, from what we have said, that once a reform, you are always reforming. What it means is that every Christian community, that means every, like us as Presbyterians, remember that the how do you call it, the Reformed tradition is not worldwide. It is regional, autonomous. That is why the PCUSA is not controlling PCG, neither PCG controlling PCUSA, right? So PCUSA is a Reformed tradition community. They have their culture and their subcultures, right? That is different from us and ours. Theirs is also different. We are different, right? But what it also means is that we need, as a generation, we need to examine our own tradition and ensure that the tradition that we are following, what we are creating, our liturgical orders and everything, is consistent with the apostolic order and the biblical roots. So that is why when PCUSA decided to go gay, we said that we will not go because it is against the what? The biblical what? Order. It's against the apostolic tradition. You understand? So when you go to Nigeria, the Presbyterians there belong to the Reformed tradition, but belong to the Reformed tradition. They have to what? Have their own culture, their own liturgical practice, but they should make sure that it follows the what? The apostolic order. So we cannot impose on us. Other than that, Anka young free Ghana and Betty as well US. The reason is that because of our culture and everything, we've created a subculture out of what? The Reformed tradition, the general one, and that is what you people are known. And they have also created theirs, which is much different from, even though we are all from what? The same tradition, Reformed. We belong to the Reformed theology or Reformed tradition. The subcultures are different, right? And then generation to come, people after us will also create another subculture. But that subculture, they should make sure that it is consistent with what? The apostolic word order. Thank you very much. Please, you can write this one. Next week, we'll look at, and the last definition, then we moved on, is Reformed theology is evangelical. So we'll just look at briefly, Reformed theology is evangelical. Then we can now go into the building stones, the foundation stones.
Papa, question, please.
Do you have time? It's 10:08. If you have time, I have no problem. Okay,
Okay.
ask your question.
Yeah, my question is about the Apostles' Creed. I know we say the Holy Catholic Church, and then we always explain that to me, the Catholic is universal. But then why don't we just change and make it the Holy Universal Church and show a clean break from Catholic? It seems we are still carrying. I understand that they are not innovating, but why do we still keep the word Catholic when there's the other words we could use for that?
I don't think that I have a best explanation to that. But what I know is that it's just semantics, it's just a language. Because the word Catholic is not relating to the Roman Catholic Church. It's two different things. They are the Roman Catholic Church, right? Roman Catholic, right? It's not, it's so when we are using the word Catholic, we are using it in a different sense. The universal church. The word Catholic means universal, right? So I think instead of using universal and then they try to use Catholic, it's okay. It's just playing with
Papa,
words.
if I may add, I know that I think 3 or 4 years ago, I kind of brought that up when I was in California. And so the whole of the California sub-district, I think we that was during Papa Berima Apiadanko's time. We changed the Apostles' Creed. We removed the Catholic and made it universal so that it makes sense to everybody, that it's not referring to the Roman Catholic. Because, the way here, we hardly say Roman Catholic, right? We say Catholic to mean Roman Catholic. And so that made it very clear for everybody. And I remember when we were going to a congregational level and everything, that's the Apostle Creed that was published in the booklet used the universal.
Universal church. Okay. Yeah, it is. It's okay. As I said, they are just synonyms, right? It's just a synonym. So the only thing is, people would prefer to say just a Catholic, right? But when we say Catholic, people think we are talking about the Roman Catholic Church. There is a prefix to that one. That church, there's a prefix to it, right? That is the church. They are trying to tell you that the church that came out from what? Rome, right? The Church of Rome. So that is what they want to say, Church of Rome. So when they talk about the Catholic, they're only talking about the church. But just look at it. Look at our local translation. You see, we don't have that idea from it. Like the account, the apostolic creed in account. When you get there, you see that thing is not there. Abaku, how do you say it? What is the tree name at that place? What name did the tree apostolic word then of the church?
Christopher, well,
Yeah,
yes,
So that is the universal church. That is the and then so in all the translation, the idea carries that kind of sense in it.
okay.
So as I said, I'm just want us to look at this. You would bear with me that this, I don't know whether you will bear with or you not bear with me, but I just want us to understand. Let's look at this. Let's look at it in this way. Is it necessary to make teaching, the teaching on our doctrine as part of the teaching topics in the church? Meaning, must the church members be taught our doctrinal basis? So that is the question I want us to answer as an assignment this term. Whether it's okay to have to, as it were, make our doctrine a teaching topic in a church. I guess that some of the issues that is coming up is surprising some of you, right? Good. And don't you think that this thing church members must know so that you know so their beliefs and practice. Like as I was saying, you dare not mention gay and those things in a Pentecost church. Then why is it that we are mentioning a very old church like ours, a well-structured church? The reason is that it's what we have done. Once a reformed church is always reforming. So the church is like a chameleon. It keeps on changing its colors, right? So, and the church members must be to know all these things. So I'm thinking that what must our doctrine be taught in our congregation? Must our doctrines be taught in our congregation? Or must the church members be taught the doctrine of the church? So that is our question for the semester. So think through, just write an essay. Just give me what you think about it, whether we have to make it a teaching topic or those kind of things or not. But you try to let me understand the both, maybe the pros and cons of the two sides. Whether you go, Papa, I don't think that they should be no. If the ministers know it does all, and I bet you there are many ministers who don't even know what you are learning. We don't know because this thing normally is taught only in the seminary, right? It's taught only in the seminary. So like you went to SMT or you went to special, you wouldn't have the opportunity to learn what we are learning. You will not have it because for them, what they teach is much different from this one. So this is one of the important courses that I think for me, all the things that we did was okay, but I think that as a minister of the church, this is some of the things that you should know so that you will continue to lead the church, you shepherd the church in a very good direction. Okay, I think it's a good time to bring our class to an end. Next week we'll be looking at the church as evangelical, Reformed theology as evangelical, or Reformed theology is evangelical. Then we'll look at it and then we'll move on. I will try to send something, a material to Osofo Jempo to send it to you. I'll send it to him. This time around, my assignment, I wanted to, you just send it to me by WhatsApp, and then you can send it both on WhatsApp and then on my, how do you call it, email, in my email for me. That will help me. Okay, can someone close us with prayer?
Awadi yada wasi anadwe bi on so so ode ye sha ase e free 8 o'clock be pun sabre yada wasi papa no mo a anyi odo ma betum ya be chirechire ye hintasem we awadi de yesre osoro dom so nyame be koso bi o adwene ntiase mo na dane de nyina ye hia se ya omatimi da bi so ade kire ne so de akokire members a etwa ye ho ahia awadi e bom pa ya anadwe ne ye gya ye ho nyina hya wonsa abra be koya katisu show bampo se manenge bampo nya kata so nyina ene abusua ewade tumidie ne pendie bere sori wana twede so mu kwa sori tia ewade show se o moja ne nti manadwe ma bampo nya kese wo yeso asade pebe chi na se de ne ho owie pia wani monyam na ahire wo yeso ye de ho asede nyina be ma wo awurade so nyame ena waye yera wase anadwe so ayen kunimdifo de amaye wo yeso temo amen.
Amen.